Hello, this is TelecomTV. I'm Martin Warwick. I'm talking with another old friend. There are so many of them in this industry now. Francisco Javier Ramon Salguero from Telefonica. Francisco, welcome. We meet all over the world, don't we?
Yeah.
Last time was on stools in a bar, but this time on chairs in a studio, but nonetheless. I want to put this to you. 3.5, getting on to 4 years now since NFV first appeared as a concept to most of the world. Mm-hmm. And if you remember back to that time, there was a lot of hype, but there's also a great deal of optimism that wide-scale commercial application of NFV deployments would be around within an 18-month time frame. Mm-hmm. Now, 18 months has now lasted for 3.5 years, and we're still not seeing any really big network-wide applications and deployments of NFV. But what we are seeing is niche or specialist markets where NFV is quite commonplace and is very well accepted. One such being virtual CPE, for example. Mm-hmm. Now, given that, and given that the entire industry is a state of flux, what's your take on what's going on and what's going to happen?
Well, the first thing is that we need to define clearly what we understand by success on that prediction.
Sure.
I mean, depending on who you asked 2 years ago, would have perhaps the unrealistic expectations that will change in 2 years the whole networks and changing by a completely new technology. I mean, that is rare that it could happen, because I mean that is just the natural renewal of the equipment, etc. Does not happen at that pace. But there's a point on what you're saying. I mean, that there has been some fields where the virtualization technologies have been quite successful. And the reason behind, there could be many, but one of them is that because they were seen as a solution of a problem to enable a new use case. And that is one of the reasons why we acquire equipment. And it's not only the natural renewal, but also the creation of new opportunities. Said that, what is missing there? I understand that in order to be more ambitious and start creating more infrastructure, so you can assume that infrastructure is valid for any new use case that you had in mind, regardless the connection with that direct revenue source or similar. We need to make sure that we can make more operational the infrastructure so that we can introduce easily new services. We are not yet there right now because there's some fragmentation on the way that we introduce those services, but we are working on that as industry, so I'm still optimistic.
Now, let's go back to talk about open source and the fact that much of NFV is predicated on the notion of openness and open source. Tell us about Open Source Mano.
Well, in the case of Open Source Mano, is probably you know, is one of the new groups that have been recently launched. In this case, it's been launched under ETSI, which is a nice location for a project that wants to cooperate with the existing standards. So it's a good bridge between both worlds, and the intention is precisely to try to make more operational that infrastructure. That, as I mentioned, it's a project that intends to deal with the Mano stack, to provide a solution of the Mano stack that is a reference for the industry in several manners. One is because, I mean, it's industrial ready, so we expect that it could be a code that eventually could go to production, so that is the expectation. And second is that it's a code that is available, so everyone in the industry knows exactly, first, how to onboard their own BNF, so they can use it to test it in their own environment without any ambiguity on what is required. And second, from the perspective of the service provider, give us a lot of say the flexibility of choosing among many options that are already pre-integrated. And second is that it helps us to put the glue in the middle of those BNFs. I mean, the BNFs are the bricks in this in this new field, and then we can collect all the bricks, and this gives us even the glue to put them together and build the new services. So it's quite ambitious initiative, as you know, but we are quite excited because we believe we can succeed on this.
What are your expectations? What are your hopes of what's going to happen over the next few months?
My expectations are, I mean, first is that we agreed, actually in a couple of weeks ago is where we had the formal kickoff of the project, on two things from the perspective of the delivery. Mm-hmm. One is that we will be issuing, this is a project that starts with running code. We had running code before we became a project, which is a good point of touch with the reality. So we'll have a packaging of that code in 1 month's time, more or less. That will be what we'll call the release 0, so that everyone can download it from the very beginning, give us their opinion, can start getting involved, and tell us what is missing, what they find missing, particularly the BNF providers that have more of the peculiarities with respect to what they require from the infrastructure. And on the other point is that then we'll start a regular cadence of every 6 months having a new release, and we'll create what we'll call, is not surprising, is release 1 after release 0.
Yeah.
That will be the first community, purely community driven release based on the release 0, of course, but with a set of features that we are completing the discussion right now, including the onboarding experience, the interaction with the underlay, the way that we build and compose the services, etc., etc. There are many things that are quite ambitious for a 6-month plan, but we think we can make it. So say that once that we have that, we'll have clarity on the information models, the data models, what is required to use it, and we'll be able to either provide the feedback to existing organizations. The obvious candidate is NFV, to provide some feedback, because we are taking as starting point their work already. We are not starting from scratch. And second is that we'll get the feedback from the field and from the reality from the BNF vendors and the rest of the players of industry, which is quite valuable.
So it takes us another step forward.
Yeah, I think so.
It does. Francisco Javier Ramon Salguero, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, a pleasure.